proceed to lesson 2, review of the exegetical process. Do you still remember the exegetical process? For this session or lesson, we compare and contrast some outlines for exegetical process, formulate an outline that incorporates the necessary ingredients to bring out the message of the passage in its original context, and yet allows the passage to speak to the contemporary audience. So we'll look at one, examine Dr. Alan Ross' outline. Remember your textbook in OT 600B. This is his outline. So Dr. Alan Ross' outline: determine the literary unit, appraisal of the passage, resolution of critical matters, philology, or basically that's the lexical form, poetic or rhetorical or literary analysis, grammatical and syntactical analysis, exegetical synthesis, development of a theology, development of the exposition.
For Dr. Douglas Stewart's outline, it's text, translation, historical context, literary context, form, structure, grammatical data, lexical data, biblical context, theology, secondary literature, and application.
And then Dr. Tim Walton also suggested an outline. He was one of the earlier professors of Old Testament in the 90s, I think the 1990s. When I came back in 2003, he already left for further studies as well. So Dr. Tim Walton outline: exposure to the passage, textual criticism, English translations, grammatical analysis, examine the literary and contextual features, semantic analysis, investigate theological features, state the exegetical outline and idea.
For Professor Don Glenn's outline, for A, preliminary overview, establish the general meaning in the broader context. So first, initial synthesis. Second, examine the historical context. B, analysis. Exegesis of the text that determines the author's intended meaning. Analyze the literary context. Resolve the significant text critical issues. Examine the grammar and syntax. Define significant words and figure of speech. Synthesis. C, correlation, assimilation, and application. Determine the text theological contribution and formulate a sermon, Sunday school lesson, Bible study idea, purpose objective, and sentence detailed outline.
Okay, we have seen 4 outlines. What is common of these 4 outlines and what is different? Maybe I'll give you a few minutes to just observe which one is common to all of them and then what could be different. So I've observed that, of course, the text is important. The historical context is in all of them. There's textual criticism. There's grammatical analysis. There's lexical analysis. And then there's theology and exegesis. The only difference I think that I saw is from Douglas, he inserted secondary literature and then application. So he's specific about secondary literature and then application. So for our class, what would we use? Let's look at page 5. So this would be the outline that we'll follow. Actually, what we have used during our exegesis class, earlier exegesis class 602 was Prof. Don Glenn's outline. If you notice that was the outline that we followed. And this time there's some things that are included because we're looking at poetry. So page 5, if you can look at that one. First is the historical background, and then number 2 is the form criticism. So you will be introduced to this later and you will know how to do this. Then translation, the exegetical idea and outline, the exegetical synthesis or exegesis proper, theological synthesis, interaction with secondary sources, and then application. You notice that As I mentioned earlier, Stewart has interaction with secondary sources. So I'm inserting that here. So we need to know how to use also secondary sources.